Okay, have you ever wondered if you have too high of standards in dating, or maybe you're just being too picky? If you've had a lot of success in your career, but your love life feels maybe confusing, frustrating, or just straight up exhausting, trust me, I've been there. So, first off, welcome back to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm Minty Lamb, and I help high achievers regulate their nervous system, heal burnout, and create success that doesn't cost them their relationships. Today, I'm joined by April Davis, founder of Luma Luxury Matchmaking, a nationally recognized service featured in Forbes and Inc. 5000. We get into the difference between standards and being picky and why your type might actually be a pattern. So trust me, by the end of this episode, you will start looking at your dating life a little bit differently and also have some insight on how to get unstuck. So let's get into the episode. So I was browsing through your Instagram and I saw a recent post and you said, standards will protect you, pickiness will block you. Okay.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really profound because, I'm dealing with clients who are people who, again, win in the business world a lot and then maybe struggle more personally in relationships. And I think that's one thing I'm constantly having questions about with my clients is like, what's an actual important standard and what are we just like being really picky about? So, could you start with what is a standard? And then actually, let's just start there. What is actually a standard and what
Standard.
is pickiness? Like, what's the difference between the two, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, well, of course, it pertains to each individual because it has to do with, I would say, their values first. So if you're looking for a partner and you want to get married and have kids, that would be a standard. Somebody that also wants that, values family, So I'm really talking about your values system, and because those are the things that are not going to change. That's who you are. And oftentimes people end up in divorce because they were with somebody that they never should have been with. I mean, because that person does not align with their values. Maybe they were atheist and, the other person is really devout, Christian. And so that's going to be a problem, especially when you have kids and you're raising kids and trying to determine how you're going to raise them with regards to religion. So I think standards have to do more with your core values. And I would say, like, when it comes to communication too, and you what you require, what are your standards for somebody that is in a relationship with you? And for example, I heard somebody talk about the reason why she broke up with her ex was because he would go on a work trip and then she wouldn't hear from him for days, and I would say, okay, he was he was not meeting the minimum standards, and having maintaining the relationship, maintaining that communication while he was on the trip was necessary. So it's things like that, I would say, or where someone's standards should be. And yeah, hopefully that helps answer.
Y No, it makes sense. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, like, I think people struggle, like, between knowing, is this a standard or am I being too much? Like, I think the communication one is a great one,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, because it's like people do communicate on different levels or use different like, some people really like texting, some people only like being on the phone, and so then if you have a texter and a phoner, like, it might not always match up. So, how do
Mhm.
you encourage your clients to really understand what their standards are versus like, "Hey,
Mhm.
we're just being a little too picky here. Can we be open to,
Right.
like, compromise or working with the other person?"
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. When it comes to, like, somebody's preferences in mode of communication, I think you have to be accommodating. What it comes down to, though, I think, is really their intent. And, if they're trying, at least if they're okay, they tried to call you and maybe they like to talk on the phone and you like to just text or just at least receive a text. And it's just having the communication and understanding, okay, well, that's just how they are. This is how I am, and getting getting used to it, especially at that beginning phase of the relationship, because a lot of times people will come in and they expect a lot from someone. They expect them to, communicate regularly right off the bat. And, you just met this person. You haven't earned a place in their life. And I've had people that have come into my life and they're newer people that have come into my life and they expect me to be communicating with them almost daily. And I'm like, I can't even talk to my mom that often. Like, do not, you do not stand above my mom. My mom is more important to me and try to keep in touch with her. So I think, that kind of, just understanding that it is earned, that position is earned, and that, um, I guess the importance in that person's life it's earned. It doesn't just happen like that. So just be cognizant of that as the relationship grows, then it can grow into more, and you would expect more communication as you've earned a higher positioning in their life. Maybe now you've graduated to boyfriend or girlfriend. So now, yeah, it makes sense to expect more regular communication. So, but when it comes to being picky, what I mean by that is and because I'm a matchmaker, I hear this. I will hear people that look at a photo and they say, "Wow, he looks like he has a couple beers on a Sunday, and how active is he if he's has a gut?" And I'm thinking, like, okay, you you're at least 10, 15, 20 pounds overweight too. Like, nobody's perfect, right? But people are just so quick to judge and create this story around somebody, and to just there, because we've been conditioned from all these apps. We think there's so many options out there, endless options out there. So then we can just keep browsing, and I call it dating for dismissal. They're looking for the no's, or saying everybody's a no because there's too many options, and it's harder to find that yes. So they have to say no many times before they can find somebody that they're going to say yes to. But meanwhile, you have, like, I think it's like 10% of the guys are getting like 90% of the dates out there on the apps. And yeah, if you're 90% of the men are not getting the dates, you're missing out on a huge pool of potential. And I think that it's because we have been conditioned. We think that there's some fantasy guy out there, Hollywood and all these rom-coms have conditioned us to think that there's some, magical billionaire that's looking for us, and he's going to be obsessed with us and give us everything as soon as he sees us. So we just need to get in front of him, and then so he can fall in love with us, and we got to find him. And that obviously does not exist, but we have this belief that there's something more, something better always out there. So why would we settle for, Mr. I heard somebody call someone the other day, like, um, mid-manager material. And, like, and meanwhile, this was a person that had just she had married well, and but she wasn't even a mid-manager level herself. And I just, to me, it's really judgmental. It's really, like, just really just so surface, and where people are so complex. Even, one date or one interaction and communication, what you're going back and forth on the app it's not enough. People are so complex. It takes multiple times being around them and talking to them, getting to know them before you can even get a glimpse into what their personality or who they really are. So I'm just a big believer in, you really should give people a chance, and get to know them. And yes, and you'll find good in everyone, but nobody's perfect. So you have to take the good with the bad.
Okay, if you're an executive who's craving more clarity, happiness, and a sense of real inner peace in your day to day, make sure you hit follow so you never miss an episode. This show is here to help you lead, succeed, and actually feel good while doing it. And if something resonates today, give it a like and share it with someone else who could use a little bit more calm in their life too. Yeah, and I have so many questions from what you just said, but, like, one point I wanna make too is, like, you're obviously dealing with, you've dealt with celebrities and high net worth individuals and all these things, and so, like, it would be easy to think that dealing with the people that, because obviously you vet who you work with, that, like, they would all be these, everyone just thinks their shit doesn't stink at that level, I kinda say, you know what I mean? So to hear the same kinda, like, comments, or "Hey, mid-manager," which was hilarious, things coming up, it's like, well, we're all human at the end of the day, right? And
Right.
it's like, and, one thing that came up for me is, like, I've told some of my clients this, it's like, when you find the right person, which I didn't understand what that meant for a long time, like, but when you find the right person for you, It's not that you even feel like you're settling. I just found like you just love the things about them that with someone that wasn't the right person would have turned you off. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like when they fart or when they're burping, like
Yeah,
all these things that could easily turn you off when it's the right person and you
right.
really love them. It's like those they just don't phase you the same way. I would imagine it's the same
Yeah.
thing. I don't have kids yet, but you love your kids, whether they stink or they're dirty or they're on their best behavior. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing. So I did want to
Mhm.
ask you, so when you have people come in and they're being really picky, how do you coach them to being more open? Like for instance, with this lady example that you're saying, she called this
Mhm.
gentleman, I'm assuming, a mid-manager, but obviously if
Mhm.
he's within your clientele, you vetted him. Do you know what I mean? So like how do
Yeah.
you coach people to be a little bit more open or to be like, "Hey, we need to just be more willing to meet someone on a deeper level than surface level," as you said?
Mhm. Well, I mean, every conversation, every person is different, but it's a lot of what I just had said, and helping them to recognize that they're being closed off to potential and just trying to be encouraging to get them to have, give that person a chance. But if somebody goes in with a negative attitude and they're pessimistic, then yeah, they're definitely going to find something wrong with everybody. And ultimately it's up to them if they want to, if they're going to have a good attitude, if they're going to have a good membership with us. It really comes down to how open-hearted and, open-minded they are. So,
Mm,
that's what I always tell people too. We have an 89% success rate. So,
wow.
the 11% that aren't successful, those are the ones that wanna be closed off, that wanna find something wrong with everybody, that are not focused on the relationship. Because ultimately, that's what people really want, is that bond in that relationship. But if you are so fixated on this, like, laundry list of things that you think you need to find in order to be able to fall in love with someone, then those people are never successful. I've never
Mm,
found somebody for them because they're in love with this fantasy, and nobody's ever going to be good enough. But once you introduce them to somebody that, that doesn't fit everything, but they do have feelings for them, they do fall in love, then they open up and they realize, oh, maybe I didn't need all of that. So they do, a lot of times they do come around, and that's always exciting to see.
y I'm sure it is probably from your shoes is probably so fulfilling or you're like, "Yes, finally, we got a breakthrough
Yeah.
here," type thing, hey, to see people come around.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say is, like, being in your shoes, doing it so long, hearing, how many countless stories, what is the one, picky thing that you hear over and over that just irks you? That, just,
Oh,
because you would hear it more than any of us, every
easy.
time you hear it, you're like,
Easy.
"Oh, here we gotta
I
deal with
know.
this again."
Yeah. Well, it's the 6 foot tall. They want somebody that's 6 feet tall. Women that want a
Mm,
guy that's 6 feet tall. That's like less than 2% of the population in the United States. And mind you, half those guys are, at least half of them are married, if not
right.
more, probably. So yeah, that thing is really annoying. That to me is really annoying, especially when she's like 5'4". So
Right.
because
Right.
there are a lot of gems, a lot of men that are just gems that are, 5'6". The average height in the US for a man is 5'9".
Right.
So you're going to miss out on all these great people because of some superficial thing like that. And they, of course, they're very bothered if somebody says, "Oh, I wouldn't date somebody that weighs more than," like, that's like them saying, "I wouldn't date somebody that weighs more than 120 pounds."
Right.
That's the same kind of threshold that they're giving. So and that's standard, and it's not fair. And quite frankly, grandma and grandpa are not together after for 50 years, some years, because he was 6 feet tall. Like, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot more that goes into a relationship, and I just think that they're being really short-sighted. And there's a lot of great people out there when you are fixated on something like so superficial, like height, or
Yeah.
even like the other one I would say is like hair. I think that really can be annoying, where they won't date somebody that's balding. And yet, I mean, we're all gonna be balding. We're all going to go gray. I hate to tell you this, but it's just the reality. And we're going to be gaining weight. And so, I don't know, that kind of superficiality is so limiting, because ultimately we all want somebody. We want and they've dated somebody that didn't meet these types of standards, or they fell in love, or they were attracted to someone like most women, if you ask them, "Okay, so if Vin Diesel came to you, you'd say no?" Or like Bruce Willis when he was in his
Okay.
prime, he was bald, like, you'd say you would turn him down? Probably not, but, that kinda thing. Or it's like Tom Cruise, he's what, 5'6"? Truthfully,
Right?
you're gonna turn Tom Cruise down? No, no, they will make exceptions, right? So, I think it's just important to have an open mind because I meet so many gems that are not going to meet those ridiculous ideals, and, I think that women would be that it'd be very short-sighted to not think about the relationship and the bond that you could have with somebody great, and you're gonna give up all these great people just because they don't hit some sort of number that you've decided on. Mm.
Yeah. Okay, now what about the reverse? Because that sounds like it's more for the women. What about
Yeah.
men? Like, what's the most annoying picky thing you hear from men typically?
Um, well, I would say it's more so when I've had men come to us and like send us pictures of women they are attracted to, and I'm like, well, these women don't actually look like this. You know, like they don't even look like their photo. Like I can recruit her for you, but she doesn't look like that. I promise you. That's filtered. That is a lot of makeup, and a lot of now it's AI. Now
Right.
all the stuff that you can do to make a person look a certain way. And so I think that's hard for me, or they because they'll say, "Oh no, she's not good enough looking," and I'm like, okay, none of these people that you're looking at online or in the whatever wherever you're seeing them, they don't even look like that in real life. So just be open to like a real person. So they're not going to have this fake filter on when you meet them in real life.
Yeah,
So
I didn't even think about that, about, like, how, like, skewed everyone's perceptions are already
Mhm.
of, like, of that, but then now add another layer of just, like, fake everything or not even a real human on the other side of that picture,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
how that would confuse you, really, like, confuse the brain on
Yeah,
what you
and
think is attractive.
right, they can't differentiate between, like, somebody that has a lot of they don't even realize that person has a lot of makeup on, and whereas, like, I'm looking at you and I can tell you're a natural beauty, like,
Mm,
you hardly have any makeup on, you don't need a lot of
thank
stuff,
you.
and whereas they're used to seeing the filter with all the stuff, and so,
Mm,
yeah, it definitely, but if I but I think, somebody like you versus someone that's all done up, if you actually met in real life, you'd see, okay, that's fake and it's really actually not that attractive, or if you made them wash off all their makeup, it's
yeah.
not all that. I'm not
Yeah.
that great. I've seen some of those pictures where it shows like with and without makeup, and it's crazy that it's the same person because, yeah, I mean, makeup's
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
that it is.
And well, not
Wow,
just makeup, but like filters and all this stuff. Yeah, they can make you look very different, to say the
right.
least.
One of the biggest struggles for high achievers is they can't tell whether they're burnt out or just overly tired. That's why I created the High Performer Stress Assessment, which will assess exactly what your mind and body are struggling with and what you need to start feeling more balanced, grounded, and happy ASAP. It only takes 2 minutes to complete, and you can find the link in the show notes below. Yeah, and again, it warps all of our perceptions. Do you mean like even like
Mhm.
peop like I have I have some friends who will kind of only take pictures of themselves with filters on, and then
Right.
I think I'm like, "But you don't actually know what you look like now because you're constantly taking pictures with filters on." And I say it from a compassionate place, but, it's true. Like, do you even really actually know what you look like now? Because your self-perception is also changing with that, right? Which
Right.
I guess is a deeper rooted question, but, um
No, I think you're really spot on. It is interesting because yeah, they don't recognize themselves. And I also because I've thought this even before like filters were a thing, and people would give us photos that were old, and that's how they still see themselves, and they would be really judgmental and negative towards somebody else, and I'm going like, I hate to tell you this, but you're not exactly a 10. And, I realized, I'm like, they still see themselves as the 20-year-old hottie that got a lot of attention
Mm,
and, was a size, 2 or 4 or whatever it is. And they're not up to speed on on where they are in the market. really, because
Right.
it is a market, you have supply and demand and what's in demand, and so they yeah, that I think that is really interesting. Another interesting thing is I've noticed, people that are widows, they have this because they're still in love with their person that they lost, and that
Mhm.
person is the most beautiful person ever, and they could show me photos, and I could show them I could try to introduce them to people that I objectively I think is, really much better looking, and nobody will ever be, like, as good enough looking, they want somebody that's
Uh,
better looking, and I'm like, "Well, I saw who you were with," but, I mean, I can't not I'm never gonna say that, but it's just it's, it's like they still see their significant other as, back when they were 20 years old and first dating and, like, they're still in love and, like, they have just a higher standard of beauty. They think of them because 'cause they're still in love with them in that way. So, it's interesting how the brain, sees they can't see it objectively. So, I'm
now
hopeful that my husband still thinks that way about me, like, 20 years from now too. So,
Me too. But,
yeah.
it just draws to a deeper rooted question, which I know we don't have time to get into today, of just, like, then that exact example with the widow, for instance, for me, what that tells is, like, that shows that real love goes deeper than the surface because you're
Mhm.
objectively looking at 2 people you have no emotional connection to, and you're saying, like, "Based on society standards, this is the better looking person," but you're still more attracted to your husband that passed, understandably so. That proves the point then that love
Mhm.
is deeper than just what you see on the
Love is
surface.
blind. Right.
It yeah,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
another rabbit hole we could go down, but
Right.
you know what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah, so right, in that people can become more attractive. It goes
r
like I was saying, people become more attractive as you get to know them, as you connect with them,
right,
so or less attractive as they
right.
open their mouth.
Exactly, and that's really the point though, right? It's like as you get to
Mhm.
know them, you should be filtering either like, "Oh, no, this person is becoming more attractive to me," or, "Oh, this person now they're like, getting me worked up, like, this is great." Like, they're becoming more attractive, so, okay, I know I only have you for a little bit of time, so there is one more question I wanted to dive into with you because, I have clients who, um are single and have never been married, and then I have clients that are maybe divorced and looking, to find love again, and what I find with the people I work with, especially because 'cause they're high achieving people, is there's this kind of this thing in the back of their head, and I was this person once, of thinking they always need to be kind of fixing themselves or healing themselves, and so it's great because they wanna do all the growth, they wanna do all the biohacking and the therapy and the coaching, which is all great, but I
Mhm.
talk about how there's this fine line between thinking something's constantly wrong with you and then loving you for who you are, and, like, I remember when I was single for many years before like like, I was dating, but I didn't have any long-term relationships till I met my fiancé, and, when you're single, you want that long-term love so badly, like, that's just, like, the one thing that's kind of always on your mind, like, you wanna find that person so badly, but then, like, I was talking to a client about this, I said you want it so bad when you're in it, but the reality is when you're in it, don't get me wrong, I love my fiancé, but now you're dealing with 2 sets of people's triggers. You're not just dealing with your triggers, you're dealing with another person's triggers. You're dealing with 2 sets of nervous systems and how both of you respond to stress. You're dealing with
Trauma.
2 sets of trauma, 2 sets of trauma, 2 sets of communication. Like, it's a beautiful journey, and it's so worthwhile with the right person. But again, now you're navigating someone else's triggers, traumas, etcetera, as well. So
Mm.
for you, I wanted to ask your perspective, like, what is your approach or your opinion on, like, I need to do all the work and become the best version of me before I get in a relationship, or I can still find partnership and relationship while working on me? Like, what's that fine line for you, or do you encounter that at all? If you're a high achiever, you probably feel the exhaustion that comes with always pushing and carrying the load. And here's the honest truth: burnout doesn't fix itself by working harder or pushing more. You're not meant to just survive your success. You're someone who leads with impact and depth and intention, and you deserve to feel calm and connected while doing it. So imagine showing up present for your work and your personal relationships, feeling calm and grounded instead of constantly stretched. If that's what you want, this is exactly what we do in the Higher Alignment program. Book your assessment call through the link in the show notes, and let's get you back to balance and back to feeling like yourself again.
Yeah, well, first, I would say that we have to all recognize and own our own traumas because it's and, sensitivities because yeah, especially at age 30, 40, 50, whatever, you're having some life experience and some baggage and bringing that into the relationship, and so you have to own that, you have to recognize, like, okay, are they really are they the problem because my buttons are being pushed, or is it my past history that makes me sensitive to this because I've been had whatever traumas or sensitivities in the past? So I'd say, first of all, recognize that because um, when we realize that so much of who we are and what we are bothered by has really been conditioned since childhood, from childhood, I should say, and it's not in our relationship from our person doing anything intentionally or unintentionally to us necessarily, then it makes things a lot easier to work through. So think it's just important for everyone to realize, do that self-care, do that work, and understand what is theirs and versus what is somebody really doing something wrong to hurt me in my relationship. And then as far as self-care and self-work goes, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily limited. I would say both people that are like single and people that are in relationships are doing a lot of that. And yeah, I think you're right. It's this kind of also, I think maybe it's a reflection of our culture, in that we're like, it's never enough. We're never good enough. We want more. What else is out there? What more can we do? And so, yeah, and I mean, it doesn't help that we are in a toxic world, and we do need to to work on those things, and we're also really smart. We have access to a lot of information, so we know we can make better choices and do things. And if we are overachievers, we're going to be doing all the things. So, yeah, but I think you're right in that it has to be a place where you have to say, okay, enough, and find that balance because who can dedicate 8 hours a day to biohacking, right? So it's not we're not all that what's his name? Brian Johnson or
Yeah.
that guy,
Well, and
right?
also, who wants to be with someone who's biohacking all day long? Do you know what I mean? Because that's like
Right.
the other side of it. Like, even when you're with your first
Yeah.
example of like the girl saying, like, he looks like he drinks beers on a Sunday or doesn't go to the gym. It's like, but it's also like, well, do you also want to be with the person who's like neurotically obsessed with their looks either? Like
Yeah.
that's again,
Yeah.
it's balance as humans, right? Because
Mhm.
that's not fun either, because then if that person's neurotically obsessed with their exterior, A, there's something deeper going on, but then B, like, they're probably gonna hold that judgment against you as well, right?
Have you seen that? There's a hilarious, skit video that was going around about 2 biohackers on a date. And
Oh, no.
and, like, you gotta, see if I can find it and send it to you, but it's pretty funny.
No,
But
I could
basically, yeah.
I could imagine how that would come across.
Well, it started off like, "Oh, they're excited," but then they feel that you'll have to see it. But anyway, yeah. I think, okay, so that could be lead into something that like when you were talking about being picky, and there's some people that would say, well, I need somebody that, works out and does all the like, I want somebody that skis like me and does all these things, da da da. And I don't necessarily think that is, and you don't need those things for a relationship, right? If somebody doesn't ski, and I know skiing is really important to you, but you a relationship is a lot more than just somebody that you do your hobbies with, right? And so it's important to maintain an open mind and not be picky about, well, I can't be with, I think there's a line like, yeah, it would be hard to be with somebody if you are vegetarian and super biohacking and healthy, and they don't have a great diet that can be challenging, but it's something that you can work through and something that maybe you can help them to learn about it and help them to find another way and another lifestyle. But I think those kinds of things like come up a lot where I feel like they can be on that line of what's picky and what's considered a standard. And I think if it's not a true like value, such as again, religion, family, and maybe even in some respects like political or just certain things there, I think it can start to get pretty muddy and people can start to justify things and say, no, these are my standards, but it's actually they are being really picky.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to highlight again what you said before about, like, its intent, right?
Mhm.
For instance, when I first met my fiancé, he's a hardcore backcountry skier, and when I first met him, I was like, "I will never do that with you." Like, on our second date, I said that, and he was kinda like, "Okay." But I told him after, I said, "Hey, the reason I shot back with that is just because, like, a, I'm 36 years old, going down a mountain now just, like, sounds like potential, like, breaking situation, like, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
sore tomorrow, but B, I'm not gonna be good at it, and I'll be honest, I like to do things that I'm good at, especially with someone I just started seeing. I said, "So that's where that response came from." I said, "But
Mhm.
I'm open to trying if you think I can do it," and then, I tried it once and I actually really enjoy it now, but, you know what I mean? I
Mhm.
get what you're saying where someone could just shut that off at the beginning, but again, you said intent is really important, and B, is this actually something we can work on versus, like,
Yeah,
me
because
wanting to have sorry, you go ahead.
right. Well, I was just saying that he met you halfway. Like, you probably if you've never skied before, maybe you started on the bunny hill and then
Yeah,
worked your way up. He wasn't taking you back, dropping you in on a helicopter and going going. That's not where you're starting. So, I think, it's being accommodating. It's making those concessions,
yeah,
and that's what a relationship is ultimately.
right, right. Okay, well, I know we have to finish up here, so just one last quick question. If you could I know this is probably gonna be a hard one, but if you had to give, like, just one like, your ultimate piece of advice for someone who's looking for love right now and has been struggling or, like, kinda like you said, looking for more reasons to say no than to say yes,
Mhm.
like, what
Mhm.
would be I know this is probably not the simplest thing, but, like, what would be that one thing you want them to keep in mind as they go through this
Oh,
process?
it is simple, honestly. It is simple. So if they're dealing with that burnout from dating, is they are going after the same type and recognizing that your type might be a pattern. So let's get out of the pattern and doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity, right? So let's try something different. And I would say yes, start swiping yes to people that on paper don't look like your type and what you would be open to. If I would have just stayed dating my type, I would have never met my husband. He's completely different than anyone that I had dated before. And yeah, but I've realized on the first conversation that at the core, we were very much aligned. And I would have never been able to see that on an app and looking at a picture. I would have said no right away. And he probably would too, if he didn't get to know me first. And I think I think that is the key is that whatever it is that you're doing, you're stuck in some sort of pattern and it's time to get out of that. And people get so frustrated and they're burnt out. And I think they want to maintain their standards or they're being picky on on these new people, but yet they accepted substandard from somebody that is maybe that hot or somebody that they're attracted to and they'll deal with and accept, be okay with whatever negative thing that that person has and not have the same kind of standards on that person as they would somebody new, right? And so it's being aware of that, and I would say just being open about, how the saying goes, "You can't judge a book by its cover." Like, give somebody a chance and see who they are inside. And now with technology, you can do a FaceTime. You don't have to go and meet with them. You can get to know them and have a conversation with them ahead of time if you want, if you're so afraid to commit to a date. But that ultimately, you have to have that conversation. And a lot of people are not willing to get off their couch to even go on a date. They're just looking for pen pals or validation or attention, whatever. So I think it's really important to meet people in real life and maybe get off the apps The apps, I think, are really a big problem for people. And so there's so many places that you can meet people in real life, but you have to be open to it. And they have to be able to feel that you are open because otherwise you're not going to be able to talk to anyone. And, for women, don't be afraid, and men, don't be afraid to make the first move or open up and have that conversation. It can be something simple as just saying hi. Hi, how are you doing? How's your day? And then take it from there. Start the conversation. I mean, conversation is an art form. It's one of the most important skills that we have. And if you are struggling with it, I would say just practice, practice with the person behind the counter at the checkout line or your neighbor or whatever. And, when that way you're better at it. You're warming up. When I do these TV interviews and I'm going on stage, I'm not going to not talk all day before I go on there. I need to warm up before I have this moment on television, right? And so I'm just chatty naturally. So I'm talking to whoever's, I'm making a coffee or the people that I meet as I'm coming in. And, I want to learn about them and just, constantly being curious, I think is really important, talking to people. So that will open up a lot of different options for you. So anyway, that wasn't just maybe one one tidbit. That's a lot, but I think that's like it in a nutshell. So
Yeah, you dropped so many gems just now. I was like picking all of it apart because I can think of multiple people right now kind of dealing with that same situation that you just laid out. I used to be where it's like you're setting the bar low for someone who's meeting certain standards, but you're not. But now the new people that you're looking at, you're holding them to something completely ridiculous, right? So
right.
you dropped so many incredible things there, April. And I wish I had more time with you today because you're a wealth of knowledge. However, before we leave here, I just want to give you an opportunity, like just let people know where they can reach you or get in contact
Mhm.
with you. Do you do matchmaking in Canada? Like
Yeah,
just
we
kind of
do.
okay. So
Yep.
please tell
Yep.
people where they can reach you or get a hold of you
Yeah.
through.
They can just go to our website. It's lumasearch.com, LUMA search.com, and it stands for luxury matchmaking. And they can fill out the profile form and meet with a matchmaker and see if we have someone that would be a good match for them and go from there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, April, today for being here. Love to have you on again if you ever have the time, but I know this is going to be so helpful for people. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.